Cordelia May Ashford pressed her broken fingers into the scorching Missouri dirt and dragged herself forward. 6 inches, maybe 8. Blood filled her mouth, copper and thick, and she spat it out, watching the dark stains spread across the pale dust like a promise of what was coming. Her left eye had swollen completely shut 3 hours ago. 4 ribs screamed with every breath she forced into her collapsing lungs. The July sun beat down without mercy, turning the world into a furnace. And somewhere behind her, fading into the afternoon heat, she could still hear the wagon wheels. Victor's men, driving away, certain she would be dead before the buzzards finished circling. She stopped crawling. Her strength had run out miles ago. What kept her moving now was nothing but stubborn refusal to give Victor the satisfaction of dying on command. Cordelia rolled onto her back, stared up at the merciless sky, and whispered to no one, to nothing, to the God she had stopped believing in 3 years ago, when Victor Remington Ashford first showed her what his love really meant. "I'm not worth saving." The words dissolved into the heat. The buzzards circled lower, and somewhere 40 miles north in the Montana Territory, a man who had not been truly human for 220 years felt something shift in the universe. A pull, a whisper, a voice he did not know calling to a guilt he could never silence. Draven Nathaniel Blackwell looked up from the fence post he was mending and watched 3 buzzards appear on the southern horizon. Patient, the way only death's messengers knew how to be. 3 days earlier, Cordelia had stood in Victor's study with stolen ledgers in her shaking hands. The room was everything her husband had built it to be. Rich mahogany, leather-bound books he never read, a globe he spun when making decisions about other people's lives. She stood in the doorway knowing that what she held could destroy him completely, or destroy her. Likely both. "Victor," she said, her voice came out steadier than she expected. "We need to talk." He was at his desk writing in that perfect copperplate script he took such pride in. 42 years old, silver threading through dark hair, handsome enough that everyone in St. Joseph's Society thought Cordelia the luckiest woman alive. No one saw the bruises under her high-necked dresses. No one knew that the gracious, charitable Victor Ashford made his real fortune trafficking vampire blood. "I'm rather busy, Cordelia." He didn't look up. "Whatever domestic concern you have can wait." "This isn't domestic." She stepped forward, set the ledger on his desk. "This is criminal." Victor's pen stopped moving. The silence that followed was the kind that came before storms. Slowly, very slowly, Victor set down his pen, looked at the ledger, then at his wife. "Where did you find your locked drawer? I've known where you hide the key for 2 years. His jaw tightened. "That's private business correspondence." "It's a record of blood sales." Cordelia's voice shook, but she pushed forward. "Vampire blood. You've been buying it from hunters, selling it as eternal youth elixir to railroad magnates and senators' wives, charging $500 a vial for something that kills half the people who use it." "Cordelia, I've tracked 37 deaths back to your sales, Victor." She opened the ledger. "Mrs. Catherine DeWitt, Senator Bradford's daughter, the Morrison twins, all dead. That's unfortunate, but hardly my fault if fools believe in magic." Victor stood. He was very calm. That was always a bad sign. "Medicine has risks. You're poisoning people for profit, and I won't be married to a man who does this. Won't you?" It wasn't a question. Victor walked around the desk, and something in his expression shifted. "You have true sight," he said quietly. Cordelia's blood went cold. She'd been so careful never to react when Victor's business associates visited, and she saw them for what they really were. The pale skin that wasn't quite human. The way they moved fluid and wrong, like predators wearing human costumes. Victor dealt with vampires directly, and Cordelia, cursed with the rare genetic gift to see through their glamour, had witnessed it all. "I don't know what you're—" The first blow came so fast she didn't see it coming. Victor's fist caught her left cheekbone, and the world exploded into stars in pain. She hit the floor hard, tasted blood, tried to scramble away. He caught her arm, twisted. She felt the bone break with a sound like a dry branch snapping. Cordelia screamed. 3 years you've been seeing them," Victor said, hauling her up by her broken arm. "Do you have any idea how valuable that makes you? True sight is 1 in a million. Your blood is the key to everything." He threw her against the bookshelf. Leather-bound volumes tumbled down around her. "You're not leaving me. You're going to give me what I need." Cordelia's vision blurred, but somewhere through the pain, a single thought crystallized. She had mailed the real copies yesterday, to Dr. Isadora Vance in Helena, Montana Territory, the only person she trusted. Go to hell, Victor, she whispered through split lips. He hit her again, and again, and when she finally stopped moving, he called for Cain Shadowborn. 2 days later, Cordelia woke in a wagon to the sound of men arguing. Her entire body was one massive bruise. She couldn't see out of her left eye. When she tried to move her right hand, 3 fingers bent at angles that made her stomach turn. Broken. Boss wants her alive. That was Cain Shadowborn's voice. Cold. Empty. He needs the blood samples. She ain't gonna make it like this. Silas Granger sounded uncertain. Maybe we dump her here. Silence. What? Silas asked. You heard me. Pull over. Tell the boss she tried to escape. He'll believe it. But she's more trouble than she's worth. The wagon stopped. Rough hands grabbed Cordelia. She was lifted, carried, then dropped onto hard ground that drove what little air she had from her lungs. You sure about this? Silas asked. She won't make it 2 days in this heat. Cain crouched down, cut the ropes on her wrists. You want to die slow or fast, Mrs. Ashford? She couldn't answer. Thought so. The sound of boots, the creak of wood, horses moving, then silence. Cordelia lay in the dirt, unable to move, and felt the sun hammering down on her broken body. She tried to pray. The words wouldn't come. But somewhere in the broken remains of her mind, a single thought remained. The copies were mailed. Even if she died here, Victor's crimes would be exposed. That had to mean something. I'm not worth saving, she whispered to the empty sky. But maybe the truth is. Her vision darkened. The world faded to black. And the last thing Cordelia May Ashford heard was the distant sound of hoofbeats. Someone was coming. She didn't let herself hope. But somewhere in the darkness, a part of her that had been silent for 3 years whispered, please. Draven Nathaniel Blackwell had been many things in his 220 years. Vampire since 1665, when a war in the Scottish Highlands had ended his mortal life and begun something else. King of the Northern Vampire Courts from 1685 to 1850. Warrior. Executioner. Judge. Monster. Now he was a rancher in Montana Territory, raising cattle on land so isolated that his nearest neighbor was 14 miles away. The isolation suited him. The guilt was harder to escape. He stood in the barn now, feeding from the cow he kept for this purpose. The animal barely stirred. Take just enough to survive. Heal the wound. Leave the creature unharmed. Penance had many forms. A sound outside made him turn. Hoofbeats, fast ones, panicked. His ranch hand Finn Holloway galloped up like demons were chasing him. Boss. Finn pulled his horse to a sliding stop. 22 years old, loyal, terrified. You need to see something. Calm down, Finn. What's wrong? Buzzards, 3 of them, circling over the south trail maybe 4 miles out. Low circling like they've found something, but it ain't dead yet. Draven's jaw tightened, and he remembered. 40 years ago, the Dawson homestead. He'd been sent to deal with a family who knew too much about vampire politics. He was still king then, still believed power justified anything. He'd arrived 3 hours too late to stop the real killers. Found Thomas Dawson shot in his yard, his wife Sarah dead in the doorway, and 7-year-old Billy hiding in the root cellar, still alive, still hoping someone would save him. Draven had carried the boy out, promised him everything would be all right, turned his back for 5 minutes. When he returned, Billy was dead. Throat cut. The killers had circled back. A dead child's eyes, still wide with hope that came too late, had broken something in Draven that 165 years of being a monster had not touched. He'd abdicated his throne that night, walked away from power, come to Montana and tried to be something else. Someone who didn't fail people. Someone who didn't arrive too late. Saddle Juniper, Draven said. I'll take a look. Finn's relief was visible. You want me to come? No, stay here. If I'm not back by sunset, ride to Elk Bend and get Sheriff Colt. Finn nodded and went to prepare the horse. Draven stood in the shadows watching the southern horizon where 3 black shapes wheeled against the sky. Patient. Waiting. He knew what he'd find before he rode out. He just prayed for once he wouldn't be too late. Draven saw her from 100 yards away. The wagon tracks, the body in the road, the buzzards circling lower. He spurred Juniper forward and was off the mare before she fully stopped, dropping to his knees beside the woman in the dirt. His first thought, too late again. His second, she's still breathing. Barely, but vampire hearing caught the shallow gasps, the struggling heartbeat, the way her body was desperately trying to keep her alive. Ma'am, his voice came out rough. Ma'am, can you hear me? Nothing. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. The pulse was there. Thready. weak. But there, she was alive. Draven eased her onto her back, and what he saw made his jaw clench. Her face was destroyed, left eye swollen shut, lips split, bruises layered on bruises, some fresh, others days old. This wasn't a single beating. Somebody had been hurting this woman for a long time. Her right hand was twisted, wrong 3 fingers broken at impossible angles. Defensive wounds. Good for you, Draven murmured. You fought back. He dampened his bandana and pressed it to her cracked lips. The water seemed to register. A tiny sound escaped her. Her one good eye cracked open, unfocused, wild with terror. She jerked away and the movement sent her body into spasms. She cried out, "Don't," the words scraped out. "Don't touch me. Please don't." Draven held both hands up, palms open. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Draven Blackwell. I have a ranch 4 miles north. I'm trying to help." Her eye locked onto his face, searching for the lie. He'd seen that look before. On people who'd learned the hard way that kindness was a trap. "You hear me?" he asked quietly. "Nobody's hurting you anymore. Leave me." Barely a whisper. "Just leave me here." "Can't do that. I'm not worth the trouble." The words hit Draven like a physical blow. Someone had taught her that, beaten that belief into her. "Ma'am, I reckon that's not your decision to make." He kept his voice gentle. "I'm going to pick you up and put you on my horse. It's going to hurt, but I'm not leaving you here." She stared at him, and something shifted. Not trust, but exhaustion. Tears cut tracks through the dirt and blood. "They'll come back," she whispered. "Victor's men. They'll kill you too." "They can try." Draven slid one arm under her shoulders, the other beneath her knees. When he lifted her, she screamed. A short, bitten-off sound. He settled her against his chest. Her whole body shook. "I know it hurts," he said quietly. "Just hold on." Getting her onto Juniper took careful work. He mounted behind her, one arm wrapped around her waist. Her head lolled against his shoulder. "What's your name?" he asked as they started moving. "Cordelia," she breathed. "Cordelia, what?" "Ashford." Then nothing. Unconsciousness claimed her again. He urged Juniper into the slowest walk and found himself talking to her, low and steady. "You're safe, Cordelia. Nobody's getting to you. Just breathe." Twice she surfaced, thrashing, crying out names. Victor, Cain, Silas, each spoken with such terror it made his chest tighten. Both times he talked her through it. "You're safe. I've got you. Just breathe." Ravencrest Ranch appeared on the horizon just as the sun touched the western mountains. Finn spotted them first and came running, his face going white. "Good Lord, boss. What happened?" "Found her on the South Trail. Get Esther Lockwood. Tell her to bring everything." "Esther's already here. She brought supper." "Perfect. Tell her we need the spare room ready. Hot water, clean cloths." Finn took off at a sprint. By the time Draven reached the porch, Esther Lockwood was standing in the doorway. 58 years old, gray-haired, with a spine of pure iron. She took one look at Cordelia, and her expression went to stone-cold fury. "Lord have mercy," she breathed. "Who did this?" "Don't know yet. Those bruises aren't all fresh. Some are a week old." Esther's jaw tightened. "Bring her to the back room." Draven carried Cordelia through the house to the spare bedroom and laid her on the bed as carefully as he'd ever done anything. Cordelia moaned. Her good eye fluttered open, unfocused. "Where?" "My ranch," Draven told her. "You're safe." "Safe." She repeated the word like it was foreign. Esther moved in, already assessing damage. "Sweetheart, I need to check your ribs. It's going to hurt." Cordelia's gaze darted between Esther and Draven, still wary. "This is Esther Lockwood," Draven said. "She's tougher than anyone I know. You're in good hands." Esther shot him a look. "Out now." "I'll be right outside." "You'll be in the kitchen. Boil more water and send Finn for Dr. Isadora Vance in Helena. Helena's 30 miles away." "Then Finn better ride fast." Esther's voice gentled as she turned back. "Now, sweetheart, let's see what they did to you." Draven left. Stood in the hallway, fists clenched, listening to Esther's murmurs and Cordelia's occasional gasps. Every sound of pain tightened something in his chest. He'd come to Montana to escape this, to escape violence, to escape broken people he couldn't save. And now it had found him. Finn appeared. "Boss, you want me to ride for the doctor?" "Yeah, push hard. Tell her it's bad." "Should I tell Sheriff Colt?" Draven hesitated. Cordelia's words echoed. "They'll come back." Bringing in the sheriff before he knew the full story could put her in more danger. "No, not yet. Just get Dr. Vance." Finn nodded and was gone. An hour later, Esther emerged. For the first time in 20 years, Draven thought she might cry. How bad? 4 broken ribs, 3 broken fingers, bruises everywhere, that left eye. I don't know if she'll see right out of it again. Draven's hands curled into fists. There's something else. The old bruises. She's been beaten before, many times. I figured. And rope burns on her wrists. They tied her up before they did this. The hallway grew darker. Did she say anything, a name, Victor? She kept saying, Victor, please stop, over and over. Esther wiped her eyes. Whoever Victor is, that woman is terrified down to her bones. Her husband. That would be my guess. Silence. She can stay as long as she needs, Draven said. Of course, but Draven, if whoever did this comes looking, you know what that means for this ranch. I know. 40 years ago, you came here to get away from trouble. I was wrong. Esther studied him, then nodded. That girl needs someone who won't run. I'm not running. Good. She headed for the kitchen. I'll make broth. Draven stood alone in the hallway as darkness fell. Through the door, he could hear Cordelia breathing. Ragged, painful, but steady. She was alive. For once, he had not arrived too late. That should have been enough. But standing there listening to a broken woman breathe, Draven Blackwell felt something he hadn't allowed himself in 40 years. The stirring of old instincts. The ones that said when something precious was threatened, you protected it. When evil needed stopping, you stopped it. When someone whispered they weren't worth saving, you proved them wrong. He moved to the door, opened it a crack. Cordelia was asleep now, her face still wrecked, her fingers splinted, but breathing. In sleep, her features relaxed, and Draven caught a glimpse of what she must have looked like before Victor Ashford. Beautiful, in the way of things that had survived fire. He was about to close the door when her good eye opened, found him standing there. You stayed, she whispered. Told you I would. Why? Because someone needed to. Her eye closed, but just before sleep took her, she murmured something so soft he almost missed it. Thank you. He closed the door, went to the porch, sat down with his rifle and watched the southern road as full dark settled. Somewhere out there, Victor Ashford's men were deciding whether to circle back. Let them come, Draven thought. He'd been a king once, ruled over darkness, commanded armies. He'd given it all up because he'd failed one child. But Cordelia Ashford wasn't a child. She was a woman who'd survived hell and whispered she wasn't worth saving. And Draven Blackwell was going to prove her wrong, even if it cost him everything. Some things were worth fighting for. He checked the rifle's chamber. 6 silver bullets. He'd never fired one. That might change soon. On the southern horizon, far in the distance, a dust cloud rose. Riders. Draven stood, stepped into shadow, and waited. The exiled king was done running. The riders didn't come that night. Draven sat on the porch until dawn broke pink and gold over the mountains, rifle across his knees, watching the empty road. The dust cloud had been a freight wagon lost and looking for Elkbend. Nothing more. But the waiting taught him something. Cordelia Ashford's fear wasn't irrational. It was the cold assessment of someone who knew exactly what monsters look like. Inside, Esther moved through the kitchen, making coffee and fresh bandages. She'd stayed the night in the chair beside Cordelia's bed. 3 times during the dark hours, Draven had heard Cordelia scream, heard Esther talking her back from whatever hell her dreams held. Now, with morning light spilling across the porch, Esther emerged with 2 cups of coffee. She's awake, Esther said, asking for you. Why me? Because you're the one who pulled her out of the dirt, because you haven't lied to her yet. Esther took a sip. That girl has spent 3 years with a man who taught her every kindness has a price. She's testing you. I won't fail. Then go talk to her. But Draven, Esther's voice dropped. She knows. Every muscle went still. Knows what you are. She saw something when you carried her in. Looked at you different after the moon came up. True sight. The pieces clicked into place. Victor Ashford trafficked vampire blood. His wife could see through vampire glamour. That wasn't coincidence. That was exploitation. How much does she know? Go find out. He set down the rifle, walked to the spare room, knocked softly. Come in. She was sitting up, propped against pillows. Someone had helped her into a clean nightgown. Her broken fingers were properly splinted. The swelling around her eye had gone down enough to crack it open. Both eyes focused on him. And in the morning light, Draven saw it happen. Her pupils dilated, contracted. Something flickered across her vision, and when it cleared, she was looking at him differently. seeing what he really was. True sight stripped away the glamour all vampires wore. It showed the truth underneath, the too pale skin, the eyes that reflected light wrong, the predator's grace, the fundamental otherness. Cordelia stared for a long moment, then spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You're one of them. Not a question. A statement. Draven didn't deny it. Yes. How long? At 220 years. She absorbed this. And you own a ranch, raise cattle, live like a human. I try to. Why? The question hit deeper than she intended. Draven moved to the window, staying in shade. Because I was a monster for 160 years, he said quietly, and I'm trying to be something else. Silence. Then, were you a good monster or a bad one? Does it matter? Yes. He turned to look at her. Not afraid, just evaluating. I was a king, Draven said, of the northern vampire courts. From 1685 to 1850, I ruled, I judged, I executed. I did what kings do when they believe power justifies anything. What changed? The memory surfaced, sharp, painful. I failed someone who needed me. A child, 7 years old. His family was murdered because of vampire politics. I arrived too late to save him. Cordelia's good eye glistened. So you ran. I abdicated, came here, tried to be someone who didn't fail people anymore. And yesterday you found me. Yes. Why didn't you leave me easier than getting involved? Draven met her gaze steadily. Because I spent 40 years telling myself that if I got another chance, I wouldn't ride past. I wouldn't be too late. He paused. You were that chance. Cordelia was quiet. Outside, a raven called. Finally, she spoke. Victor knows about vampires. He deals with them, buys their blood, sells it as medicine. Her voice was flat. And I can see them. That's called true sight, isn't it? It is. Victor's been trying to use me, to extract whatever makes me see through your glamour. She looked at her broken fingers. That's why he kept me alive. I was worth more as a resource than as a wife. The casual way she said it made Draven's hands curl. The men who left you on that trail worked for your husband, Cain Shadowborn and Silas Granger, Victor's enforcers. A bitter laugh. Thought if I took the evidence, if I got it somewhere safe, he'd let me go. What evidence? Ledgers, 3 months of transactions. Proof that Victor's been trafficking vampire blood. She met his eyes. I mailed copies to Dr. Isadora Vance in Helena before I ran. Draven's blood went cold. Dr. Vance, Isadora Vance. You know her. She treated me 40 years ago, figured out what I was, and didn't turn me in. He moved closer. Cordelia, if Dr. Vance has those documents, every vampire connected to Victor's operation will know where to find you. I know, but I'd rather die exposing him than live protecting his secrets. You're not going to die. You can't promise that. Watch me. Their eyes held, and something passed between them. Not trust yet, but the beginning. I should be afraid of you, Cordelia said softly. You're a vampire, a king, a monster by your own admission. But when I look at you all, I see as the man who didn't ride past. That's enough. It's more than I've had in 3 years. Before Draven could respond, hoofbeats thundered up the road. Fast, urgent. He was at the window instantly, a rider approaching hard. Dr. Isadora Vance on her gray gelding. 2 days early. That meant trouble. Stay here, he told Cordelia. Draven. Her voice stopped him. If Victor's men come, if they get past you, they won't. But if they do, she held up her broken fingers. I can't fight, can't run. If they take me back, he'll kill me slowly. For months. Cordelia, promise me you won't let that happen. The request hung between them. Heavy, terrible, sincere. Draven crossed back, crouched so they were eye level, took her uninjured hand. I'm not going to let them take you, he said, each word measured. Not today, not ever. You understand, you can't. I was a king, Cordelia. I commanded armies. I held a throne for 160 years against enemies you can't imagine. His voice dropped. Your husband's men are human, fragile, mortal. If they come for you, they'll learn why vampires ruled the darkness. Her breath caught. You'd kill for me. Someone you just met. I'd burn the world for someone who whispered they weren't worth saving and believed it. He squeezed her hand gently. You're worth fighting for. You just need to start believing it. Tears spilled down her bruised face. She didn't speak, just held onto his hand. Hoofbeats reached the yard. A woman's voice called out, "Draven Blackwell, I need to speak with you, now." He released her hand, stood. "That's Dr. Vance. She'll examine you." "Draven," her voice stopped him at the door. "Thank you for not riding past." He looked back at this woman with her broken bones and shattered trust and stubborn will to survive. "Thank you for crawling forward," he said, "even when you didn't think anyone was coming." Then he was gone. Dr. Isadora Vance dismounted in a cloud of dust and urgency, 45, steel-haired, with a face that had seen everything and been impressed by none of it. She pulled a leather satchel from her saddle and fixed Draven with a look that could strip paint. "Is she here, Cordelia Ashford?" "In the spare room." "Good. I need to examine her immediately." She started toward the house, then stopped. "And we need to talk. Privately." "What's wrong?" "Everything." Her face was grim. "But first, my patient." She disappeared inside. Draven stood on the porch feeling pieces of something large and dangerous clicking into place. Finn emerged from the barn. "Boss, I thought I was supposed to fetch the doctor." "You were. She came on her own." "That's bad." "Probably." Inside, he could hear Isadora's professional voice examining Cordelia. Esther's lower tones. Cordelia's occasional gasps. 30 minutes later, Isadora emerged. Carefully neutral, but Draven saw the fury underneath. "She'll live," Isadora said, "but whoever did this knew exactly how to cause maximum pain without killing. These are torture injuries. Systematic, prolonged." "Her husband." "So she said." Isadora set her arm down. "I have something you need to see." She pulled out a leather-wrapped package. Documents, ledgers, correspondence receipts. "This arrived at my office 3 days ago. No return address, just my name and a note." She handed it to him. Cordelia's handwriting, shaking at the edges. "If anything happens to me, bring this to the federal marshal." "I was going to mail it to Helena," Isadora continued, "but then Finn showed up and I put the pieces together." She pulled out a sheet. "This is evidence of vampire blood trafficking on a scale I've never seen." "And the buyer list? Senators, railroad magnates, territorial governors." Draven scanned the names. His jaw tightened. "There's more." The last page. He flipped to the final document. His blood ran cold. A proposal. Handwritten subject: True Sight Serum Development Extract. Blood compounds from True Sight bearer, CMA, to create detection serum. Applications: vampire identification at distance. Mass production for hunter guilds. Estimated yield 200 to 500 doses. Extraction method: controlled exsanguination over 6 to 8 weeks. Subject expendable after synthesis complete. Draven's hands shook. Controlled exsanguination. Drain her slowly over 2 months. Then dispose of the body. "They were going to bleed her to death," he said. His voice came out wrong. Too low. Dangerous. "Yes. And if they'd succeeded, they would have armed every vampire hunter with the ability to identify vampires on sight. Your kind hunted to extinction within a generation. You think I'm involved? No. I think you're the only thing standing between that woman and a death that would make torture look humane." She took the documents back. "But you need to understand what's happening. This isn't just about one abused wife. This is about stopping a genocide. Human and vampire both." "What do you mean, human?" Page 17. He found it. Medical records, test subjects, 12 names, all marked deceased. Victor's been testing the serum on purchased samples. 12 people died, hemorrhagic failure, blood poisoning, organ shutdown. He's killing people to perfect a weapon. Yes, and the moment he gets Cordelia back, he starts the real work. A sound from the doorway made them turn. Cordelia stood there leaning on Esther, wrapped in a shawl, face pale but eyes blazing. "How long have you been standing there?" Draven asked. "Long enough." Her voice was steady despite the pain. "Long enough to hear my blood is worth genocide. That Victor's been killing people. That he planned to drain me like livestock." "You should be in bed," Isadora said. "I should be dead, but I'm not." Cordelia moved into the room, each step agony. "And I need to hear all of it." Esther helped her into a chair. Cordelia sat carefully and fixed them with a look that dared anyone to argue. "Tell me everything." Isadora glanced at Draven. He nodded. "All right, but understand, once you know this, there's no going back. You'll be a target. Humans who want to use you. Vampires who want you dead before you can be used. I'm already a target. At least this way I'll know why." So Isadora told her about vampire courts, the fragile peace, the hunters in shadows, the dealers who trafficked in vampire components, and what True Sight really meant. You're 1 in 10 million, Isidore explained, a genetic mutation that lets you see through vampire glamour. Most carriers don't survive because vampires kill them or humans exploit them. Because your blood doesn't just let you see vampires, it can be synthesized into a serum that gives anyone that ability, temporarily. But the extraction process, she gestured at the documents, 6 to 8 weeks of controlled bleeding, 200 doses. Cordelia's voice was flat. Then disposal. Yes. How many doses has he already extracted? The question caught them off guard. What? Isidore asked. Cordelia held up her arm, showed the inside of her elbow. Faint scars, needle marks. He's been taking blood samples for 6 months. Called it medical testing. I didn't question it because questioning Victor meant she touched her broken fingers. Draven felt something dark unfurl in his chest. How much? A vial a week? Sometimes 2. That's at least 50 vials, Isidore breathed. If he's been refining the process, he's close. Cordelia met her eyes. That's why Cain and Silas were taking me to the facility. For final extraction, silence fell. Then Esther spoke, cutting through the tension. Well then, we can sit here wringing our hands, or we can do something about it. Do what? Isidore asked. We're talking about a man with connections, money, private enforcers, vampire traffickers who'll kill everyone in this room. And we're talking about a woman who survived her own husband trying to murder her. Esther looked at Cordelia. You mailed those documents for a reason. What did you want to happen? Cordelia was quiet, then straight and wincing but determined. I wanted Victor destroyed, not arrested. Destroyed, his business exposed, his crimes known, his name turned to poison. Her good eye blazed. I wanted every person he hurt to know justice was possible. Then let's give you that. Draven's voice was quiet but absolute. They all turned. You're a vampire, Isidore said carefully. If Victor's operation gets exposed, it'll put a spotlight on your entire kind. I don't care. Draven's words were simple. Final. I was a king once. I made decisions that killed thousands in the name of vampire security. I told myself exposure meant extinction. He looked at Cordelia. I was wrong. Some things are worth the risk. Some people are worth protecting, even if it costs everything. Draven, get the federal marshal. Bring him here. We'll give him everything to take down Victor's operation. That could take days, and Victor's men, let them come. Something in Draven's voice made the temperature drop. They'll learn what happens when you threaten someone a vampire king has chosen to protect. Cordelia stared. You'd do that, risk exposure, risk everything. You asked why I didn't ride past. He held her gaze. This is why. Because 40 years ago I failed by arriving too late, and I swore I'd never fail anyone again. He paused. I'm not failing you. Silence. Then Esther slapped her hands together. Right. That's settled. Isidore ride for the marshal. I'll get word to Sheriff Colt. Finn can fortify the ranch. And Draven, I'll train Cordelia to defend herself. With broken ribs and fingers, Isidore asked. She doesn't need to win a fight. She just needs to survive long enough for help. That I can teach. Cordelia's hand went to her ribs. I can't even stand without help. Then we start with what you can do. Draven moved to the gun cabinet, pulled out a revolver, checked the chamber. Your left hand, can you hold this? She reached out. Her grip was weak but functional. Good. He placed the gun in her palm. This is a Colt Peacemaker. 6 rounds. Pull the hammer back. Point. Pull the trigger. Don't aim for the chest. Aim for center mass, biggest target. I've never shot anyone. Hope you never have to. But if Victor's men come through that door, I want you able to put them down. Her hand trembled, but she didn't put it down. How many men does Victor have? I don't know. Cain and Silas were the only ones I saw, but he mentioned others. A facility. Guards. Then we plan for worst case. 5 to 10 men, armed, coming. When? Soon. He looked at Isidora. How fast can you get to Helena and back? If I ride through the night, 36 hours. Make it less. We might not have 36 hours. Isidora nodded, grabbed her bag, paused. Draven, if they come, if it goes bad, it won't. But if it does, remember that Cordelia isn't just a woman you saved. She's the key to a weapon that could destroy your species. If Victor's people get her back, they won't. Isidora held his gaze, then nodded. I'll bring the marshal. Don't die before I get back. She was gone in hoofbeats and dust. Esther moved to the kitchen. I'm making enough food for an army. Finn appeared. Boss want me to set up watch rotations. No, I'll handle night watch. You sleep during day, stay alert at sundown. You're gonna stay up all night, every night. I'm a vampire, Finn. I don't sleep much. The young man's eyes went wide. You're a vampire. Yes, 200 years. Esther's known for decades. Dr. Vance knows. Now you know. Matter of fact. Problem. Finn opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Cordelia with the revolver. At Esther. At Draven in shadows. No, sir. Just explains some things. What thing? Why you never eat Esther's cooking. Why you're always in the barn at noon. Why the horses never spook around you. I prefer differently alive. Despite everything, Cordelia laughed, small cut short by ribs but real. Draven looked at her. You're taking this well. I'm too tired to panic, she set the revolver down, but I should be more afraid of you. Why aren't you? Because you're the only person in 3 years who's asked what I want instead of telling me what I need. She met his eyes. That counts for more than fangs. Before he could respond, hoofbeats cut through the air. Multiple riders, fast. Finn was at the window. Boss, 5 men, South Road. Draven moved beside him. His enhanced vision caught details. 5 riders, well-armed, military precision. Leading them was a man with a scar across his neck. Cain Shadowborn. Get Cordelia to the back room, Draven said quietly. Esther, go with her. Finn grabbed the shotgun. What are you going to do? Cordelia asked. Draven picked up his rifle, chambered around. I'm going to introduce myself and explain why this ranch is off limits. He walked onto the porch as the riders pulled up. 5 men, 5 guns. Cain Shadowborn stared with eyes that had seen too much death. Looking for someone, Draven called. Cain's hand rested on his pistol. We're looking for a woman. Dark hair, late 20s, might be injured. Might have. Who's asking, men with better things to do than talk to squatters. Cain dismounted. The woman's name is Cordelia Ashford. She's sick, confused. Her husband's worried. Her husband, the one who broke her ribs or her fingers. Cain's expression didn't change. Don't know what you're talking about. Then let me be clear. Draven stepped to the edge of the porch, into light. Let them see his eyes reflect wrong. Let them see how he moved. Too fluid, too controlled. The woman you're looking for is under my protection. That means you leave, now, and don't come back. One of the other riders laughed. Old man, you got confidence for someone outnumbered 5-1. I'm not outnumbered. Draven's voice dropped. You are. And he let the glamour slip. Just for a moment, just enough. The pale skin, the predator's eyes, the slight elongation of canines. 3 of the 5 went for their guns. Draven was faster. He moved before they could clear leather crossing 20 feet between heartbeats and slammed into the closest rider. The man went down hard, unconscious. Draven spun, caught the second man's gun hand twisted until bones snapped. The third man got a shot off. The bullet passed through where Draven had been. Draven grabbed the rifle barrel, yanked it free, used it to sweep his legs out. 4 seconds, 3 men down. The 4th ran. Draven let him. That left Cain standing in the yard, hand on his pistol, eyes calculating. You're fast, Cain said. Vampire fast. And you're still in my yard. The woman has something that belongs to my employer. The woman is a human being. She doesn't belong to anyone. Nevertheless, Cain's hand tightened. I have orders to retrieve her. By any means necessary. Then you've got a choice. Draven's voice was cold. Absolute. You can leave. Take your men. Tell Victor Ashford his wife is beyond his reach. Or you can draw that pistol and learn firsthand why vampires ruled the darkness for millennia. Cain studied him. Something flickered in his eyes. Not fear. Recognition. I know you, Cain said slowly. I've seen your portrait in the old court records. His eyes widened. You're King Draven, the broken crown. I was. I'm not anymore. They said you abdicated, disappeared, 40 years ago. His voice carried awe. You were legend, the vampire who broke his own throne. I broke my throne because I was a monster and finally noticed. And now you're protecting a human woman. One my employer needs. One your employer will never touch again. Cain was silent. Then he did something unexpected. He took his hand off his pistol. I believe you, he said quietly. But you should know something, King Draven. Victor Ashford isn't just a blood trafficker. He's connected to the Crimson Syndicate. You know what that means. Draven's jaw tightened. The Syndicate. Vampire criminals who operated outside all courts, who dealt in secrets that could topple kingdoms. I know. Then you know they won't stop coming. They'll send more men, better armed, and eventually, Kane paused. Eventually they'll send someone even you can't stop. Let them try. Kane shook his head. You've been gone from our world too long, old king. You don't know what the syndicate has become. He mounted his horse. But you'll learn, and when you do, I hope that woman's worth what it costs you. He turned, looked back once. For what it's worth, I'm glad she found someone who'd fight for her. I just hope you survive it. Then he was gone, taking his men, leaving Draven standing in dust, wondering what he'd set in motion. Behind him, the door opened. Cordelia emerged, leaning on Esther, holding the revolver. They're gone, she asked. For now. Will they come back? Yes, she nodded, like she'd expected nothing less. Then we should prepare. You should rest. I'll rest when Victor's in the ground. Her voice was iron. Show me how to shoot that gun. Show me how to fight with broken bones, because I'm not lying in bed waiting to be rescued. Draven looked at this woman, battered, broken, still standing through sheer will. And he realized something. He wasn't saving her. She was saving herself. He was just making sure she survived long enough to finish. All right, he said. Come on, let's teach you how to make broken fingers into a weapon. As the sun set over Montana, as shadows lengthened across Ravencrest Ranch, a vampire who had been a king and a woman who had forgotten her worth stood together on the porch and began to remember what it meant to fight for something worth keeping. Dr. Isidore Vance returned 34 hours later on a horse on the edge of collapse with a man whose badge caught the morning light like a promise of justice. Federal Marshal Samuel Cross was 53 gray at the temples, with eyes that had seen the worst of humanity and somehow still believed in the best. He dismounted with careful movements and studied the ranch with the assessment of someone cataloging exit routes. Mr. Blackwell, he said, measured, professional. Dr. Vance tells me you're harboring a witness to federal crimes. I'm protecting a woman from being murdered, Draven replied. If that makes her a witness, so be it. Marshal Cross's eyes flicked to Draven's face, lingered. Recognition dawned. You're not human. No, Dr. Vance mentioned that. Said I'd need to keep an open mind. His hand didn't move toward his gun. She also said you were a king once. I was many things I'm not proud of. And now I'm a rancher who found a dying woman and refused to let her stay that way. Marshal Cross studied him, then nodded once. Fair enough. Can I see the evidence? Isadora handed over the satchel. The marshal opened it in the yard and began reading through Cordelia's ledgers. His expression darkened with every page. This is comprehensive, he said finally. If even half is accurate, Victor Ashford's been running the largest blood trafficking operation in the Western Territories. It's all accurate, Cordelia's voice came from the porch. I triple-checked every entry. She stood in the doorway wrapped in a shawl, still pale, still bruised, but standing on her own. 3 days of Esther's care and Draven's training had put steel back in her spine. Marshal Cross removed his hat. Mrs. Ashford, I'm Marshal Samuel Cross. I need to ask questions. Ask. Did your husband traffic vampire blood knowingly? Yes. Did he assault you? For 3 years, systematically, with intent. Did his men attempt to murder you? They left me on the trail today. The marshal's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I need you to understand something. If we pursue this, you'll be the primary witness. That means testifying in public against your own husband. Good. It also means putting a target on your back. Marshal Cross. Cordelia's voice was quiet but absolute. I mailed those documents knowing exactly what it would cost. I ran knowing I might die. I survived knowing I'd have to face him again. She straightened. I'm not afraid of testifying. I'm afraid of staying silent while he destroys more lives. Marshal Cross looked at her for a long moment, then put his hat back on and turned to Draven. Mr. Blackwell, I'm going to need your ranch for a few days, as a staging area. If Ashford's men come, they already did, yesterday. I sent them away. How many? 5, led by Kane Shadowborn. The marshal's expression shifted. Shadowborn, I know that name, enforcer, killer, half vampire if rumors are true. Dampier, Draven confirmed, and he'll be back. Then we'd best be ready. Dr. Vance, can you ride to Elkbend, get Sheriff Colt and deputies? Already planned on it. Isadora was mounting again. But Samuel, you should know. This isn't just a human crime. The vampire courts are involved. Let them think it. Marshall Cross's voice was iron. "I've spent 20 years enforcing human law. High time someone enforced it on both sides." Isadora rode out. The waiting began again. Draven spent 2 days teaching Cordelia how to survive, not how to fight. Her broken ribs and fingers made that impossible. But how to shoot left-handed, how to reload with broken fingers braced, how to move minimizing exposure, how to fall without reopening wounds. Small skills, survival skills, the skills of someone who might have to save herself when help couldn't reach her. "Keep your elbow locked," Draven said as Cordelia aimed at the target behind the barn. "Don't fight the recoil. Let it happen. Then bring the gun back to center." She fired. The bullet hit 3 inches left. "Better." He moved behind her, careful not to touch. "You're pulling left still. Probably compensating for the broken fingers throwing off your balance." "Victor always said I pulled left." The words came out flat, but underneath Draven heard the poison of 1,000 small criticisms. "Victor was teaching you to doubt yourself. I'm teaching you to trust your aim even when it's imperfect. Fire again." She did. This time the bullet struck an inch from center. Cordelia lowered the gun, looked at the target, and something that might have been pride flickered across her bruised face. "Again," Draven said. She fired until the cylinder was empty, then reloaded, fumbling with broken fingers, and fired 6 more. By sunset, she could hit center mass 4 times out of 6. It wasn't expert marksmanship, but it was enough. "If they come through that door," Draven said as they walked back, "you don't hesitate. You don't warn them. You fire until the gun is empty. Understand?" "I understand." "Say it back. Fire until empty. Don't hesitate." "Good." He paused at the porch steps. "Cordelia, I need you to know something." She looked at him. In the fading light, her bruises were shadows. Her broken fingers were splinted wood and determination, and her eyes held something he hadn't seen 3 days ago. Hope. Fragile. Tentative. But there. "If things go wrong," Draven said, "if they get past me, past the marshal, past everyone, I know." She cut him off. "I put the last bullet in myself. You told me." "No." He met her eyes. "I told you that to keep you from giving up. But I need you to hear this now. If they get through all of us, it means I'm already dead. And if I'm dead, it's because I chose to stand between you and them. That's not failure. That's choice. Draven, you're worth fighting for, Cordelia. You're worth dying for if it comes to it. And I need you to believe that. Not because I say so, but because it's true." Tears gathered in her eyes. She blinked them back. "No one's ever said that to me before." "Then everyone you've known has been blind." She reached out with her good hand, touched his face, just a brush of fingers across his jaw. "You're cold," she said softly, "but you feel like safety." "Safety's an illusion." "Maybe, but you're real." Her hand dropped. "That's more than I had 3 days ago." Before Draven could respond, Finn's voice carried from the barn. "Boss riders coming. Lots of them." Draven was moving before the words fully registered. Cordelia followed as they reached the yard where Finn stood pointing. Dust cloud. Big one. At least a dozen riders. Marshal Cross emerged, rifle in hand. "That's more than I expected." "That's an army," Finn said. His voice shook. Draven's enhanced vision picked out details. The lead riders, the formation, the military precision. And at the front, riding a black stallion, was Victor Remington Ashford. Beside him, Kane Shadowborn. Behind them, 10 men armed for war. But there was someone else. Someone riding slightly apart. Tall, pale, moving with the fluid wrongness that marked ancient vampires. Draven's blood went cold. He knew that silhouette, had seen it in courts and battlefields for 100 years. "No," he breathed. "What?" Marshal Cross asked. "What is it?" "My brother." The riders pulled up at the gate. Victor Ashford dismounted with casual confidence. 42, handsome, well-dressed, every inch the successful merchant and concerned husband. "Marshal Cross," Victor called out pleasantly. "I believe you have my wife." "I have a witness to federal crimes," the marshal replied. "Whether she's still your wife is between her, you, and a divorce court." "Ah, but you see, that's the problem." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "My wife is unwell, prone to delusions, female hysteria. I have medical documents attesting to her fragile mental state." "I've seen the bruises, Mr. Ashford. They're not delusions. Accidents, she's clumsy, falls often. Ask anyone." "I'm asking her." Marshal Cross gestured toward the porch where Cordelia stood holding the revolver. Victor's eyes found his wife, and for just a moment the mask slipped. Draven saw the calculation, the cold assessment. Cordelia, darling, Victor said, come home. We'll forget all this unpleasantness. I'll get you the help you need. The help I need, Cordelia's voice carried clear across the yard, is a divorce lawyer and a federal judge. Victor's smile froze. You don't mean that. I mean every word in those ledgers, every date, every transaction, every death your greed caused. Those documents are forgeries. They're in your handwriting. Victor, your cipher, your Koyan. I was your wife for 5 years. I know how you hide your sins. The silence that followed was broken by slow, measured applause. The tall vampire dismounted, moved forward with the grace of something that had walked the earth for centuries. And when he stepped into light, Draven saw the face he'd hoped never to see again. Lucian Blackwell, his younger brother, current vampire king of the northern courts. Beautifully said, Lucian purred. His voice was silk over steel. Such courage. I'm almost impressed. He turned to Draven. Hello, brother. It's been 40 years. You're looking rustic. Lucian. Draven's voice was flat. This doesn't concern you. Oh, but it does. You see, Mr. Ashford here has been doing business with certain elements of our community, elements I've been trying to eliminate. Lucian's eyes glittered. And when I heard my exiled brother was involved, well, I simply had to come see for myself. I'm not involved in Victor's crimes. No, but you're protecting the one witness who could expose them, which makes you complicit. Lucian's smile was razor sharp. And as king, I can't allow that. Marshal Cross stepped forward. I don't know what authority you claim, but this is United States territory, federal jurisdiction, and you have no, I have every authority. Lucian's voice cut like a blade. Over my own kind, and this, he gestured at Draven, is my traitorous brother, who abdicated his throne, fled his responsibilities, and is now interfering in matters that could expose our entire race to extinction. Lucian, listen. No, you listen. Lucian's composure cracked. Do you have any idea what will happen if those ledgers become public? If humans learn vampire blood is being trafficked, if they learn about the courts, the councils, the careful balance we've maintained, they'll learn the truth. They'll learn to fear us. And fear leads to war. War leads to extinction. Our extinction, Draven. Because there are millions of them and thousands of us, and if they unite, Lucian's jaw tightened. Everything we've built will burn. Maybe it should, Draven said quietly. If what we've built requires women like Cordelia to be tortured and killed, maybe it deserves to burn. You always were too sentimental. Lucien turned to Cain Shadowborn. You know your duty. Cain dismounted slowly. His hand went to the sword strapped across his back. A vampire executioner's blade, silver-edged, blessed, designed to kill even the oldest permanently. Your Majesty, Cain said carefully, are you certain? I'm ordering you as your king to execute the traitor Draven Blackwell for crimes against vampire sovereignty. Lucian's voice was absolute. Do it now. Cain drew the sword. The blade sang. Draven didn't move, didn't reach for a weapon, just stood there watching his former enforcer approach with the instrument of his execution. Draven, Cordelia's voice cracked across the yard. She raised the revolver, aiming at Cain. Get away from him. Mrs. Ashford, please. Marshal Cross put a hand on her arm. This is vampire law. We can't. I don't care about vampire law. She cocked the hammer. Draven saved my life. I'm not watching him die for it. Cain stopped 10 feet from Draven. The sword hung at his side, ready to sweep up and through. King Draven, Cain said quietly, I'm sorry it's come to this. Don't be. You're following orders. I understand. Do you have any last words? Just one thing. Draven looked past Cain to where Victor stood watching with satisfaction. Before you kill me, I want Cain Shadowborn to know the truth about his father. What truth? Lucian demanded. The truth about who he is. Cain's entire body went rigid. My father is dead, has been for 30 years. Your father is standing in front of you. The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye turned to Draven, then to Cain, then back. Cain's sword wavered. What did you say, 1849 July, the summer campaign against the Eastern courts? Draven's voice was steady. There was a village. Humans caught in the crossfire. I ordered it cleared. My soldiers, they were not gentle. One took liberties with a young woman, a servant. I didn't know until after. Didn't know she survived. Didn't know she bore a child. You're lying. But Kane's voice shook. Your mother's name was Catherine Shadowborn. She had a scar on her left wrist from a kitchen accident when she was 12. She sang hymns when she was afraid. And she died giving birth to you because Dampier births kill human mothers. Kane's sword dropped slightly. How do you know that? Because I investigated after. When I learned what my soldier had done. I found the records, found her grave, found, Draven's voice broke, found that she'd written a letter, naming me as complicit, as the king who'd allowed it to happen. You're saying you're my father. I'm saying I allowed the conditions that created you. Whether that makes me your father or your enemy, I'll let you decide. Kane stood frozen. The sword hung forgotten. Then Cordelia's voice cut through the silence. She wasn't talking to Kane. She was talking to Victor. You knew. Her words were ice. You found his mother's letter. You told him his father was a vampire, but you never told him which one. You used his pain, his rage, used it to turn him into your weapon. Victor's expression didn't change. Business is business, my dear. Business, Cordelia's laugh was bitter. You turned a grieving son into a killer and called it business. I gave him purpose, direction, power. Victor's voice was smooth. He was nothing before I found him. You made him a slave. Cordelia's hand tightened on the revolver, just like you made me one. She pulled the trigger. The bullet took Victor in the shoulder. Not a killing shot, but close enough to send him stumbling backward, blood blooming across his expensive jacket. Chaos erupted. Victor's men went for their guns. Marshal Cross shouted orders. Finn dove for cover. And Kane Shadowborn stood in the center, sword raised, frozen between two choices. Kill the vampire king who was his father, or kill the man who'd used his pain as a weapon. He looked at Draven, saw the guilt, the genuine remorse, the 40 years of trying to atone for sins that could never be forgiven. Then he looked at Victor, saw the calculation, the cold manipulation, the absolute certainty that everything was a transaction. Kane made his choice. He turned, covered the distance to Victor Ashford in 3 long strides, and drove the silver-blessed executioner's blade through Victor's chest with the precision of a man who'd killed for a living. Victor's eyes went wide. He looked down at the blade, then up at Kane. You killed me, he gasped. I made you. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing but lies. Kane's voice was empty and took everything that mattered. Victor Ashford fell, the sword pulled free, and the man who'd trafficked in blood and death and broken lives bled out in the Montana dust while his hired men scattered. Lucien stared. You killed a human, in front of witnesses. You just signed your own execution warrant. Good. Kane dropped the sword. I'm tired of living with ghosts. Marshal Cross moved forward slowly, gun drawn but not aimed. Kane Shadowborn, you're under arrest for murder. I know. And you're willing to testify about Victor Ashford's operation, about everything, every last detail. Kane looked at Draven. On one condition. What condition? King Draven goes free. He's done nothing but protect someone who needed it. That's not treason. That's conscience. Lucien's jaw tightened. I am still king. I can still order. You can order nothing here. Marshal Cross's voice was iron. This is United States territory. And on United States soil, vampire law doesn't override human law. If you want to execute anyone, you'll need to go through federal courts first. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. Now you can leave peacefully, or you can cause trouble and learn exactly how many silver bullets I brought. Lucien looked at Draven, at Cordelia, at the marshal standing firm. This isn't over, he said. It is for today, Draven replied. Lucien mounted his horse. Before he rode out, he looked back once. You gave up a kingdom for this brother, for these mortals, for this fragile alliance. His voice carried something that might have been sorrow. I hope it's worth it. It already is. Lucien rode away, taking the vampire politics with him, leaving only the human aftermath. Marshal Cross holstered his gun, looked at Victor's body, at Kane kneeling in the dust, at Cordelia still holding her revolver with shaking hands. I'm going to need statements, he said, from everyone. And Mrs. Ashford, I'm going to need you to testify at the trial. What trial, she asked. Kane Shadowborn's trial for the murder of Victor Ashford. The marshal's voice softened. But also the trial of everyone connected to the blood trafficking operation. The buyers, the dealers, the people who looked the other way. How long will that take? Months, maybe longer. Cordelia looked at Draven. He nodded once. I'll testify, she said, for as long as it takes. The trial of the century began 3 months later in Helena. Cordelia took the stand in a courtroom packed with journalists and the powerful men whose names appeared in her husband's ledgers. She wore a simple dress, her ribs had healed, her fingers had set though they would always bend slightly wrong. The bruises were gone, but when she spoke, everyone heard the weight of 3 years of systematic torture. My husband broke my arm the first time I questioned his business, she said. Her voice was steady. He told me it was my fault, that I'd made him do it, that if I just listened, just obeyed, he wouldn't have to hurt me. The courtroom was silent. He broke 3 more bones over the next 3 years. Ribs, fingers, my cheekbone. Each time he said it was my fault. Each time I believed him a little more. She looked at the jury. 12 men, not one woman, but she held their eyes. When I found his ledgers, when I saw what he was doing, I thought, if I could just show him the damage, he'd stop. I thought the man I married was still in there somewhere. Was he? The prosecutor asked gently. No, that man never existed. The person I married was a construct, a mask. Underneath was someone who saw people as resources and pain as a tool. What made you finally run? Cordelia's hand went unconsciously to her side where her ribs had been broken. He told me his plan, what he wanted to do with my blood, how long it would take to extract it all, how much it would hurt. She swallowed, and he smiled when he said it. The prosecution rested. Victor's lawyers tried to paint Cordelia as mentally unstable, as a woman scorned inventing elaborate fantasies. But they couldn't explain the ledgers in Victor's handwriting, couldn't explain the medical records of 12 people who died testing his serums, couldn't explain the testimony of Cain Shadowborn, who laid out the entire operation. And they couldn't explain the 37 deaths Cordelia had tracked back to Victor's elixir sales. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Victor Ashford was sentenced to 25 years hard labor. He never made it to prison, died of heart failure in his cell the night before transport. Natural causes, the coroner said. But Draven, watching from the gallery, saw the slight discoloration around Victor's neck. The faint bruising that suggested someone with very strong hands had helped nature along. Cain Shadowborn was tried separately, pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, argued extreme emotional duress, got 7 years, served 3. The vampire trafficking ring collapsed. Dozens of arrests, hundreds of charges, a reckoning that reached from Montana to Washington and exposed corruption at levels that made headlines for months. And through it all, Cordelia stood firm, testified, answered questions, faced down the men who'd bought and sold misery. Then when it was finally over, she went home, to Ravencrest Ranch, to the man who'd pulled her out of the dirt and refused to let her believe she wasn't worth saving. 1 year after Draven found Cordelia dying on a Montana trail, they sat together on the porch watching the sun set over mountains that had witnessed both their transformations. She'd healed. The nightmares came less frequently. Her broken fingers worked well enough to hold reins, write letters, pull triggers if needed. She ran the ranch with competence that surprised everyone except Draven. Turned out a woman who could track blood trafficking through ledgers could manage cattle and finances without breaking a sweat. She'd become something the territory had never seen. A woman who'd survived her own murder testified against power and walked away with her head high. Esther called her the strongest person she'd ever met. Marshall Cross called her the best witness he'd ever had. Draven called her Cordelia and tried not to let her see how much he'd come to need her presence. Now in the golden light of late summer, she turned to him. I'm ready, she said. Ready for what? You know what? He did. They'd been dancing around this conversation for months. Cordelia, you don't have to. I want to. She took his hand. The first time she'd initiated touch since that day, she'd aimed a gun at Cain. I want eternity, Draven. Not because I'm running from mortality, but because I'm choosing what comes next. You're 28. You have your whole life ahead of you. I had my whole life ahead of me when Victor started breaking bones. I had my whole life when his men left me to die. She squeezed his hand. Life isn't measured in years. It's measured in choices. And I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing forever. It's not reversible. Good. I'm tired of things that can be taken away. Draven studied her face, looked for doubt, fear, the desperate need to escape mortality that drove so many to seek the vampire's bite. He saw none of it, just calm certainty, and something that looked remarkably like love. Are you sure? One last time. I whispered I wasn't worth saving, Cordelia said softly. You proved me wrong. You showed me I was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth... Her voice caught. Worth love. You were always worth it. I know that now, but I needed someone to show me. To stand beside me, not in front of me, not behind me, but beside me until I could stand on my own. She touched his face. You gave me that. Now let me give you something back. What company? For as long as forever lasts. She smiled. Because you're lonely, Draven Blackwell. You've been lonely for 200 years. And I'm tired of being alone too. He pulled her close. Careful still, though she didn't need careful anymore. But he would always be careful with her. Always mindful of the broken woman he'd found in the dust and the warrior she'd become. Last chance to change your mind, he murmured. Stop trying to talk me out of claiming my own life. Fair enough. The bite when it came was gentle, reverential. Nothing like the violence that had defined her previous existence. This was choice. This was partnership. This was two broken souls finding in each other not completion, but companionship. The change took 3 days. Draven held her through the fever, through the pain of transformation, through the moment when her heart stopped and restarted beating to a different rhythm. When she opened her eyes, they reflected lamplight like a wolf's. When she smiled, fangs glinted. And when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of eternity. Hello, my king. Hello, my queen. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at the ranch, postmarked from a federal prison 3 states away. Cordelia opened it carefully, read it twice, then handed it to Draven without a word. Mrs. Blackwell, I hope this letter finds you well. I know I have no right to write, but there's something I need you to know. My mother left a journal. I found it after the trial. She wrote about the night I was conceived, about the soldier who assaulted her. But she also wrote about afterward, about a vampire who came to her door months later, who'd investigated the incident, who brought her money, medical care, protection, who promised her child would be watched over even if he couldn't acknowledge it. That vampire was Draven. He didn't stop the assault, didn't prevent my mother's death, but he tried to make it right in the only way he knew how. And when he abdicated his throne, part of the reason was me. A child he'd failed before I was even born. I spent 30 years hating a father I'd never met. Victor gave me a target for that hate. But the real justice was learning the truth. King Draven didn't save me, but he tried. And in trying, he showed me what redemption looks like. Thank you for shooting Victor, for having the courage I lacked. And thank you for believing that even someone like me could choose differently. I have 3 years left to serve. When I'm free, I don't know what I'll do, but I won't be what Victor made me anymore. That's something. Respectfully, Cain Shadowborn. Cordelia folded the letter carefully, looked at Draven. He's your son. Biologically, nothing more. Don't you want to know him, to try to build something? Draven was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice carrying 200 years of regret and hope tangled together. I want him to be free. Free of me, free of Victor, free of the legacy of violence that created him. He paused. If he wants to find me after he's served his time, I'll be here. But I won't force it. He's earned the right to choose his own path, even if that path leads away from you. Especially then, that's what real love does. It lets go. Cordelia took his hand. You're a better man than you think you are. I'm trying to be. Trying counts. They stood together as the sun set on another day. Another chance. In the barn, ravens settled into their nests, murmuring in their secret language. In Elkbend, Esther closed her saloon and thought about the unlikely family that had formed. A vampire king, a transformed queen, a young ranch hand, a doctor, a marshal. In Helena, Dr. Isidora Vance filed the last trafficking case reports and permitted herself a small smile. Justice, it turned out, was possible, even against impossible odds. And in a federal prison 3 states away, a Dampier sat in his cell and read his mother's journal by lamplight, learning about the vampire who'd tried to atone, about the possibility that even people born from darkness could choose light. The story spread, about a woman who whispered she wasn't worth saving, and a vampire who proved her wrong, about broken people finding strength in each other, about choosing to stand beside someone rather than in front or behind, about redemption being possible even for monsters who'd spent centuries being monstrous. Young women facing violence heard it and remembered. That survival was possible. That testimony mattered. That their worth wasn't measured by what had been done to them, but by who they chose to become after. And somewhere in Montana, on a ranch named for ravens and redemption, 2 people who'd been broken and lonely discovered they could be whole and together. Cordelia stood on the porch one evening watching the stars come out with vampire eyes that saw every constellation in perfect clarity. Draven joined her, didn't speak, just stood beside her the way he'd promised. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Giving up your throne, your power?" "Not once, even though it cost you so much. It gave me more." He looked at her. 40 years ago, I thought penance meant suffering alone, punishing myself with isolation. And now I know penance means building something better, protecting instead of ruling, loving instead of commanding. He took her hand. "You taught me that. I taught you nothing. I was half dead when you found me. You taught me that worth isn't measured in power. That strength isn't the absence of breaking, but the choice to keep standing after you're shattered." He paused. "That love is standing beside someone and watching them save themselves." Cordelia leaned against him. "You proved me wrong about something." "What?" "I thought I wasn't worth saving. You showed me I was worth everything. You proved yourself wrong. I just made sure you survived long enough to see it." They stood together as night deepened, and the world transformed into the silver-edged beauty that only vampires could truly see. Two people who'd been lost and found each other. Two people who'd been broken and chosen to heal together. In the distance, a raven called. Draven and Cordelia both turned toward the sound, smiled, and together they walked into the darkness that was no longer dark but full of possibility. Forever stretched ahead of them. Vast, uncertain, beautiful. And for the first time in 200 years, Draven Blackwell wasn't afraid of it, because he wasn't facing it alone. And Cordelia Ashford now. Cordelia Blackwell wasn't running anymore. She was standing, beside the man who'd shown her what worth looked like, with the strength she'd always had but finally recognized. Worth saving, worth fighting for, worth love, worth everything. The ravens settled into silence. The stars wheeled overhead, and on a ranch in Montana where broken kings and shattered queens learned to be whole, two souls found what they'd been searching for all along. Not completion, not rescue, just company, for as long as forever lasted. And that, in the end, was worth more than any throne.